Welcome to episode 3, From Rules to Relationship, Stage by Stage Parenting for Faith. Here's something every Catholic parent knows. Your 7-year-old and your 17-year-old don't need the same kind of faith conversations. I know that sounds obvious, but so often we can miss it. We either water everything down for older kids because we're afraid of the questions, or we overload younger kids with abstract theology that they're not ready for, and then wonder why it doesn't connect. Developmental psychology tells us that kids are asking very different questions at different ages. Piaget showed that young children think concretely while teenagers finally wrestle with abstract ideas. Kohlberg mapped out how our sense of morality matures from what do I get in trouble for to what is good and true in itself. And Erik Erikson reminds us that adolescence is the stage of identity. Who am I? And here's what's beautiful. Catholic teaching aligns with this. The church has always called parents to meet children where they are, to form consciences step by step, and to teach them to pray, to pass on the faith through both instruction and lived experience. So in this episode, we're going to walk through a stage-by-stage playbook, what to focus on in childhood, 0 to 12, and how to accompany early adolescence, 13 to 15, and then finally how to support older teens and young adults, 16 to 23. Because if you know what's happening developmentally, then you can respond in ways that are realistic, compassionate, but most importantly, effective. And instead of fighting uphill battles, you can actually plant faith in a way that takes root by understanding their developmental stage and how their brain is working and understanding information. Let's start with children, 0 to 12. And yes, I do understand that we can micro divide that, but here is what we know from psychology. In these years, kids often think concretely. They learn through rhythm, ritual, and repetition. Piaget called this the pre-operational and then concrete operational stages. What that means is they're not wrestling with abstract theology or ideas yet. They're asking very practical, down-to-earth questions like, why do we go to church? Is God mad if I forget a prayer? Morally, they're also concrete. Kohlberg described children at this age as being in pre-conventional and then early conventional stages. And what that means is that they think in terms of rules and fairness. Is this right or wrong? Is this fair? And so while it may be annoying to hear that's not fair for the millionth time, it is developmentally appropriate. And then there's Erik Erikson, who tells us that children in these years are building trust and then industry. Can I trust the people around me? Do I have something valuable to contribute? So here's where Catholic teaching lines up beautifully, both in the timing of the sacraments and what the Catechism calls us to. The education in faith should begin in the child's earliest years. In other words, don't wait till high school. So what does this look like in a Catholic home? Anchor faith in rituals, grace before meals, a bedtime blessing with holy water, lighting a candle for a feast day. These little rhythms preach louder than those lectures. Make Mass non-negotiable but joyful. Kids can tell if you approach Sunday with dread or with gratitude. If Mass is framed as a gift, then they will learn to see it that way. Tell stories. Kids live in imagination. Read Bible stories. Tell them about the saints. Let them act it out or draw it out. Connect rules with relationship. Instead of saying, don't lie because it's bad, you could try, we tell the truth because Jesus is the truth. And then people learn to trust us. Let them serve, even small acts, helping set up a table for Sunday dinner, carrying up the gifts at Mass, build a sense that I matter here. This place would be different without me. Remember, at this stage, faith is mostly caught, not taught. Kids will parrot your prayers before they really understand them. They'll copy your gestures before they know what they mean. And that's okay. That's how trust and belonging are built. So your role in childhood is to give them a faith that feels safe, joyful, and part of everyday life. The foundation you set now is what they'll wrestle with later. Now let's talk about early adolescent, roughly 13 to 15. This is the age we already know from the research that is critical. Remember the Kara study, Going, Gone, found that the median age of leaving the church is just 13, which means these middle school years aren't just awkward socially, they are spiritually decisive, and psychology explains why. Developmentally, teens are now entering what Piaget called the formal operational stage. Abstractly, they start to wrestle with ideas like justice, suffering, and hypocrisy. Kohlberg says that morality is shifting too. They're moving from simply following rules to asking, what's the principle behind this? Do I agree with it? And Erickson reminds us that adolescence is the stage of identity, the big questions like, who am I? So of course, they're going to test boundaries. Of course, they're going to question church teaching. It is not necessarily rebellion. It is developmentally normal. And it's important how we respond to this. Now, what does this look like in Catholic family life? Welcome the questions. Teens need to know it's safe to doubt, to wrestle, to push back respectfully. If questions are silenced, they don't disappear, they just go underground. So instead, create space, a weekly faith check-in at dinner, or just asking what's something about God or the church that doesn't make sense to you right now, or that you're struggling with. Share your story in age-appropriate ways. Teens connect to vulnerability. Talk about your own doubts and how you wrestled with them, not in a way that makes you the hero and not in a way that furthers their doubts, but in a way that shows them that it's a journey and that's okay. Connect them with mentors. A godparent, a youth minister, a faithful young adult can sometimes say what you can't. Teens need voices other than mom or dad to echo the same truths. Serve side by side. When faith is all lecture and no mission, it can feel abstract. But serving the poor, working at a food pantry, going on a parish service project, these experiences make faith concrete. Repair conflicts. Early adolescence is often the stormiest age for family arguments. Don't underestimate the power of an apology. A parent saying, I was too harsh, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? Models confession and reconciliation in a way that no CCD or RE class ever could. So here's the takeaway. Early adolescence is not the time to clamp down harder or to avoid tough stuff. It's the time to move from rules into relationship. Your role is to stay present, keep the conversation open, and show that Catholicism can stand up to any of their questions. Because if kids are going to decide whether the faith is truly theirs, they need room to wrestle, and parents who won't walk away or panic when they do. Late adolescence and young adulthood, 16 to 23 years old. This is where many parents feel the most anxious because their kids are stretching into independence. The key here is to help parents see how to stay connected. Now let's talk about those later teen years and young adulthood, roughly ages 16 to 23. By this point, our sons and daughters are standing at the edge of independence. Developmentally, Erickson says they're working on identity and intimacy. Who am I and who am I with? Psychologists call this stage emerging adulthood. It's a time of exploration, new friends, new environment, new choices. And here's what the research shows. By the age of 23, nearly 80% of those who will leave the Catholic Church have already done so, which makes sense developmentally, but it also makes these years critical. Additionally, these years are also filled with possibility. This is the season when faith has to shift from inherited to owned and chosen. A teenager who only went to Mass because you drove them there now has to decide, will I get myself to Mass? Will I live this out when no one else is watching? So what does this look like in a Catholic family life? Talk about faith as an adult choice. Respect their free will. Before they leave to college, sit down and ask, what is your plan for keeping Sundays holy when you're away? Not as a guilt trip, but as an invitation to think practically and intentionally about how faith fits into real life. Connect them with community. Research shows young adults who find peer faith groups are more likely to stay Catholic. So help them locate a Newman Center, Focus Ministries, or a vibrant parish before they even pack. Encourage adult habits, budgeting a little for donations, carving out prayer time, making confession part of their monthly routine. These small practices signal my faith belongs in my adult life. And this is where we start shifting our tone. Instead of policing their choices, we step into the role of companion. Ask questions like, how's your soul doing? What has it been like for you lately? The tone moves from supervisor to fellow pilgrim. Make home a place of welcome. When they come back for breaks, invite them to bring a friend to Mass. Keep traditions alive. Let them know faith still belongs here. And yes, some young adults will still drift. You can do all the right things and our children still have free will. But remember St. Monica. Remember the thousands who do come back in their late 20s and 30s, often when they marry or have children of their own. Seeds planted now have a way of bearing fruit later. So in these years, your role is to trust more, to accompany more, and to control less, to keep the door open and relationships strong, but the prayers constantly steady, because this is the season where faith either fades or becomes the. So here's what we've talked about in this episode. Faith doesn't look the same at every age. In childhood, kids need ritual, joy, in a sense that faith is woven into the fabric of family life. In early adolescence, they need space to question, room to wrestle, and parents who stay present in relationship instead of panicking. And in late adolescence and young adulthood, they need to begin making faith their own, with parents shifting from supervisors to companions, still praying, still supporting, still welcoming. The church is wise here as well. She reminds us in the Catechism that parents are the first educators in faith, but she never asks us to be perfect. She asks us to be faithful, to create homes where tenderness, forgiveness, and service are the rule. So if you've been feeling like you've failed at some stage, remember this. God works with imperfect parents and imperfect plans. The saints were raised by imperfect parents. Repair is always possible, and He can take even small stumbling efforts and use them to plant seeds of faith that last forever. In our next episode, we're going to lean into the hard stuff, the questions our teens and young adults are actually asking. Why does God allow suffering? What about science and evolution? Why is the church's teaching on sexuality so different from what their friends believe? And why does God sometimes feel silent? We'll unpack each of these questions honestly, both with psychology and Catholic wisdom, and I'll show you how to respond in ways that don't shut the door to conversation, but keep the door open for faith. We'll give you some practical, usable scripts as well. Because remember, questions don't have to be the end of faith. They can be the doorway into a deeper one. Here at the Catholic Counseling Institute, we want to make Catholic psychology authentic, accessible, and affordable, which is why we are happy to provide all of these videos for free. But if you would like to go further, if you would like to expand and interact with the concepts in each of these episodes, I've created a parent survival guide just for you. It's got more resources. It has all the information and notes so that you don't have to remember everything. More scripts, more ideas, and ways to expand all of these concepts. And it's cheaper than the cost of a couple cups of coffee. You'll find a link in the description. But it does help keep the lights on and the editors editing. Until next time, I will see you in the next episode.